Kia ora and welcome everyone to another episode of 9-Minute Big Life Mindset. Today, you're going to hear about laughter, death, and my attempt at refereeing a family meeting. So, a couple of weeks ago, my cousin passed away, but before he did, my older brother and I went and saw him and we shared in his final days. It should have been a really tough environment, but you know what? One thing that stuck out was our ability to keep a sense of humour, and over the course of 3 days, we laughed and laughed and laughed some more. There were times when visitors would come around and it was becoming mildly inappropriate, but there we were, using laughter to punch through all of that sadness. Between us, we used the humour as a coping mechanism to detract from the threat of death. But mostly, it was because we were just recalling times from our past that were genuinely funny. Moments we looked back on and cherished. A week later though, I'm back in Wellington and I get a call and I speak with him as he takes his final breaths. Man, it was overwhelming, it was heart-wrenching, and it was nothing like you see on TV. It was filled with this kind of beautiful sadness that I simply don't have the words for. Anyway, I fly back to Auckland that afternoon and I'm immediately called on by the family to coordinate the funeral preparations. Now, my brain has this function where I become really process-oriented once that initial emotional hit drops. There's a methodical aspect that focuses on tasks and timelines, and it's super helpful at times where emotions can swing wildly. So it's a natural fit for me to take the lead. As you know, I come from a big old Polynesian family. What I haven't mentioned though, is that our family loves a good fight. It's not even with outsiders though. No, we specialise in war amongst ourselves. Or at least, my parents' generation specialise in this style of warfare, where family meetings are like a scene out of a zombie apocalypse movie. As I step into the role and begin identifying all the parts of the funeral, it's obvious I'll need to keep the older generation on side because they've got very specific views on how the process needs to be managed. It's one thing to have the mantle of leadership, but it's another thing completely for that to even be recognised. And as the older gen arrive from around the country, they each put me through my paces. Now, I've gone through this process recently for my Auntie Margaret that we cared for, so I've got a template for what needs to happen. Catering, marquees, funeral directors, cemetery plots, you name it. There's a bunch of bases that need covering, but the key thing I do is to surround myself with great people. I lean on my cousins, my brothers and sisters, and allocate, delegate, or just subjugate until we've got a core group that covers every aspect of the preparation. Because we're islanders, we know there'll be large groups of people coming to pay their respects at any time of the day or night until the burial. This means I've also inherited the role of family spokesperson as well, which is something I really don't want. If you're not familiar with the Polynesian way, each group that arrives needs to be greeted and there's certain protocols every time. It should be done in Cook Island Māori, which I barely speak, and usually comes with prayers, which is kind of ironic since I'm agnostic, or at the very least, unreligious. I navigate the first 2 days without much trouble, but trouble is on its way, and lo and behold, it arrives in the form of my dad. If you haven't already, make sure you check out episode 12, The Family Curse, especially if you fancy having a good laugh at my expense. Okay, so my dad arrives, and quite rightly, he wants a family meeting that brings together the key people for an overview of the preparations so far. I've been expecting this, so I have all the details, including who I've engaged, the costs, and the timelines. At the meeting, I talk about the next steps and the decisions that have been made by the inner circle of the family, i.e. my auntie, my cousin's partner, and my cousin's sister. I'm confident, but there's still some nerves because there's nothing quite like sitting in a lounge explaining funeral preparations when you've got a whole bunch of eyes fixated on you. And I'd also had my recently deceased cousin laying beside me in a casket. It's pretty intense. As I speak though, I quickly gain confidence and I can see my dad is taking some comfort from the work to date. My old man picks up on a very legitimate piece of info that I hadn't gathered, but ultimately I passed the test with flying colours. I breathe deep after that meeting because I know my first real test is done and dusted. The following day, a meeting needs to take place to revisit a critical decision that's subsequently been made by their inner circle. Upon hearing that decision, my old man, my dad, objects to it 100%. Once again, he's actually got these super valid points, but it's a situation where both the solutions are the right ones, just for different reasons. I won't share what the topic was due to the private nature, but I can tell you my role in the meeting. My role is to pull together the inner circle plus my dad. But I know before it even starts that I'll be stepping in to referee a fight. Like I said, my family has got a track record. Anyway, I lay down the facts and the information used by the inner circle to make their earlier decision. Before long, I open the floor, and by the time my dad speaks, I can tell he's pissed off. Emotions are flying, but fortunately, by sheer force of will, I get a decision from the group that gives me the green light. Unfortunately, by the time the meeting's finished, we've actually got less people than we'd started with. That's right, it's not quite a Rakanui family meeting unless someone's gotten so annoyed they've just up and left in a hail of harsh words. Ultimately though, I've got consensus or a general agreement on what the next step is. I breathe deep, like so deep it fills my toes, before I take consolation from what's just happened, because this moment will resonate with me for the rest of my life. This is actually the moment, I believe, where the shift in power and responsibility is handed down from my parents' generation to ours. And our future looks less confrontational. I don't know about you, but my family can be some of the most challenging, exhausting, energy-consuming, supportive, dedicated, and loving people that you will ever meet. They mean the world to me, and I could never express just how much I love them. Hey, thanks again, everyone, for joining me on this journey. Statistically speaking, 100% of us are going to die at some stage. For my mind, it pays to appreciate this. And if you haven't already, man, make a will. And even better, write down or record what you want your funeral preparations to be. Or you could just invite me and my family around and we can battle it out on your behalf. Just kidding, seriously. Alright, as always, remember to click follow or subscribe, and please share this podcast with your people. You can also reach me on Instagram at big_life_mindset. And please remember, folks, to be uncomfortable and grow.